This week's episode of The Time Traveler's Wife was too drab for an HBO series. And if it's going to be more about Henry, it should be called The Time Traveler. Here's my episode 2 recap of The Time Traveler's Wife. I'm sorry, but the writer's room needs to turn up the heat before it starts alienating audiences. This series is not really from the perspective of Clare so far, and it's giving male gaze. It's giving male gaze, and I'm worried. So 6-year-old Claire runs to the woods to meet Henry with a box of clothes that she brings every time. And she waits for him to arrive. I mean, you see where this is going. And the camera zooms in at her 6-year-old feet and next to these 38-year-old shoes and clothes. I mean, come on, guys. This is cringy. Okay, Henry appears naked in a museum full of kids. Like, I think we don't have to drive the point with kids seeing him naked in every episode. We get it. He appears involuntarily at the most inopportune moments, but we don't have to see him naked in front of kids every episode. I don't want to see it. Now, Henry's variants return to the scene of his mom's tragic death. That was prominent in this episode. It's Christmas Eve, 1988. It's snowing. It's Chicago. Mom and Henry are headed to the airport to pick up Dad when a car rear ends there. Henry is 8 years old in this scene. He time travels out of the scene before he's hurt too badly. He gets a bump on the head, but he transports out of the car. Now, their car is propelled into the truck in front of them, and on the bed of the truck is a plank of metal sheetrock, and that sheetrock slices through the dash window of their car, decapitating Mom. Henry disappears moments with an impact and gets away with only a bump on his head. This bruise never goes away. We can see it at every age that Henry is from 8 on. Many of Henry's variants return to that scene. So we see so many of them. I believe it was like 15 or 20 of them at the same time reviewing this scene, revisiting this crash site, examining how and why it happened. 8-year-old Henry tries to find a way to change the course of history to prevent this accident and ultimately to prevent his mom from dying, but he learns that he doesn't have that power. We also don't see who's driving this vehicle, so I'm curious if it's Henry or worse, if it's his dad, which his dad just seems very unlikely. But could it have been one of Henry's variants driving this car? I don't think so. It doesn't necessarily make sense. I'm just curious who was driving. And at this point, it could have been anyone. It could be literally anyone. So we learned that Henry and all of his variants can travel within the span of his lifetime, but they can't alter time. We get to know 8-year-old Henry a little more and see how his mom's death impacted him growing up and how he wanted to stop it, but he can't. So he keeps revisiting this and how he wanted to stop it, but he can't. It's predestined. And that's pretty much the tone of this episode, predestination. He can't stop it. It adversely affects his childhood and a lot of his young adulthood. But it kind of comes off as a prop or a device designed to persuade the audience to forgive 28-year-old Henry for being such a prick to Claire. She even admits that he conditioned her since she was 6 years old to be the woman he'd marry. Like, this is grooming. But she has no say in it because it's predestined. I mean, he just flat out, Henry, has groomed Claire since she was 6 years old to be the woman he'd marry. And she has no say-so in it. All of the awkward bickering back and forth between Henry and Claire on the train and at the cafe, it's a bit annoying and redundant. It only devolves into her submitting to his prickish ways because she doesn't have control over her predestination. That's an awful position to be in, which is to marry Henry later in life. Her teen years are gone waiting for Henry. Her young adult years, or half of them, are gone waiting for Henry to come around. We see Henry time travel to his parents' proposal, his mom's opera concerto, his parents strolling him as an infant in the park. Now, he's a stranger, and they continually see him popping up, but they don't recognize that this is their son. He's just some random stranger touching the infant's face. Okay. Henry learns how to pickpocket, steal clothes and food, and even pleasure himself with his 16-year-old variant. And Claire just shrugs it off, all of it. Her character seems so matter-of-factly and deferential that it's becoming frustrating. That's why I'm like, I hope the writer's room really picks it up. She's disputatious at times, arguing with him, mainly with 28-year-old Henry, all because he's seemingly her soulmate, but she has to submit to the predestination. I don't know how long this is going to be entertaining. I hope episode 3 gives us more of Claire. She waited for him those 14 years. What was she doing then? I'd like to get to know Claire. After all, this is the time traveler's wife. I'd like to know what Claire was doing those 14 years. Was she just waiting? And if so, I need more from this series, and quickly. I need more excitement. This is an HBO series. Like, what are we doing? I am holding out for episode 3. I hope again that we get more from Claire and we understand, like, I want her to have more development. I want her to be more developed as a character. I want to know her. I want to know more about her parents. We just got a glimpse of her parents and her brother. I want to know more about them and her life and what she was doing in those 14 years. That's all I'm saying. Thank you so much. If you stuck around this long, I certainly appreciate you. Please consider liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. And until next episode, peace.